So today, we're covering one of the most heart-wrenching events to grip Minneapolis and beyond, the shooting at Annunciation Catholic School. It happened in the early morning hours of August 27, 2025, as the school year was just beginning. Morning Mass was underway inside the church when gunfire erupted. At that moment, children were gathered, praying, and preparing for their first days of classes. It's hard to imagine a more sacred moment turning into a scene of unimaginable terror. The person behind the attack was identified as 23-year-old Robin M. Westman. Westman used a rifle, shotgun, and pistol, each legally purchased, to unleash the attack, firing through stained glass windows toward the congregation of students and worshippers. In those terrifying seconds, 2 children, aged 8 and 10, lost their lives. 17 others were injured, 14 of them being children, and 3 elderly parishioners in their 80s were also among the wounded. In the chaos, school staff and worship leaders acted quickly, guiding students under pews and evacuating them to safety in mere minutes. It's a detail that speaks to their courage and presence of mind amid unfathomable violence. When the shooting ended, investigators found that Westman had taken their own life behind the church. The immediate response involved Minneapolis police securing the site, while the FBI launched an in-depth investigation. Federal authorities labeled the attack an act of domestic terrorism and a possible hate crime aimed at Catholics. But why that question, why someone would commit such senseless violence in a place of worship, has echoed across the community. In the hours and days following the tragedy, investigators uncovered disturbing pre-recorded videos and a digital manifesto that Westman posted on YouTube just before the attack. One video showed heavily armed weapons and ammunition magazines marked with hate-filled messages, anti-black, anti-Semitic, anti-Hispanic, and even hateful slogans like "Kill Donald Trump." Other inscriptions referenced previous mass shooters like Adam Lanza and Brenton Tarrant, and one in particular reads, "6 million wasn't enough," a deeply anti-Semitic statement. There were pages of writing in a notebook, some using Cyrillic-style script, and a hand-drawn layout of a church interior. The videos also contained an apology addressed to family members, suggesting mental anguish and a twisted rationale. These recordings were taken down almost immediately after being posted, but archived copies circulated among investigators and the public. The content, chilling and disorienting, forced a community to confront not only the reality of routine gun access but also the presence of violent ideology being shared and scheduled through social media. In the aftermath, civic leaders addressed the grief and demanded action. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey spoke from the heart, that children had been praying, it was the first week of school, and that such violence should never happen. He urged the community not to use the tragedy as a reason to scapegoat the transgender community, emphasizing that hate and bigotry should never become the focus. Governor Tim Walz and others echoed that same call to compassion and prevention, while Catholic leaders and clergy invited communal healing. A prayer vigil brought together more than 600 mourners, including the auxiliary bishop, government officials, and members of the community. Even the Pope sent a telegram expressing spiritual solidarity. Hospitals rapidly mobilized to treat the injured, with many children requiring surgery and multiple in critical condition, though most were expected to survive. In the grief, parents, friends, and neighbors comforted each other and held triggered rituals like quiet vigils, reflections, and prayer. Flags were ordered to fly at half-staff through August 31 by presidential declaration. Through the shock and sorrow, the community began questioning how such legal access to weapons, paired with toxic ideology, could enable violence so rapidly. How does the nation prevent the next massacre? Perhaps more importantly, how does it vaccinate its society against the infectious spread of online radicalization and hate? In technical terms, the attack exposed how legal firearm purchases, combined with planning and ideological motivation, can produce tragedy in under 2 minutes. The approximate duration witnesses say Westman's rampage lasted. Those are parameters worth dissecting. Weapons are accessible, ammo is easy to get, planning happens on open platforms, and the lethality is amplified inside places that historically symbolize sanctuary. At the same time, acts of preparedness, staff knowing where to shelter kids, quick lockdowns, first responders arriving quickly saved lives. These response dynamics point to resilience, even in such a dire scenario. But the greater weight of the event lies in the interwoven human and societal failure to safeguard public spaces, to monitor rising hate online, to screen for mental health crises, and yet, also to rally, comfort, and rebuild. No words can capture the heartbreak of communities shattered by school shootings. Reporting the facts, charting response details, describing ideology and timelines, and outlining healing rituals doesn't lessen the pain, but maybe it helps us understand what needs urgent attention: preventive policies, community resilience, and vigilance against expressions of hate.